got a couple questions that I wanted to cover that I was asked prior to this to spend some time with, and then I just got a thought that I want to share with you just as a general kind of coaching message and opportunity. Um, First question that I wanted to address and just hopefully help coach a little bit on. These are two great questions. They're related together, and just love that this was asked. But let me read you these questions, and then we'll kind of go through and share a couple things about them. And maybe I just mentioned too, as you come on to this live feed, the way that I'm learning a little bit about how Facebook works, I think there's an option to click follow under one of these settings here with live. And I know I've been asked by a few people like how to get notified when you go live. One, I'm trying to do it just on a consistent basis, so every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, you know that I'll be here. But also there should be an option somewhere around there for you to hit follow, which will send you a notification, or I think it's a bell. Maybe it was a bell that I discovered. You hit on this bell anyway. I'll send you a notification that I've gone live, just so you can make sure not to miss any of these if that's what you'd like to do. Otherwise, there will always be recordings. And I also am asking all my followers to take an opportunity to go and find me on Facebook. No, not Facebook. Sorry, YouTube. This is live, so there's going to be lots of mistakes. YouTube. I'm trying to build up a little bit of a following there so that I can broadcast live on YouTube as well. It's under Josh Downs Coaching, and if you just hit there and hit subscribe, I think you got to have 50 followers is the minimum to do some live streaming. So I'm still building up for that, but eventually we'll have that going as well. Everything starts small, right? Whatever you want to do, and maybe that's just one of the hidden messages. We're all afraid to put ourselves out there because what if nobody shows up, or what if nobody responds, or what if I don't get any of this or that? That's okay. That's how everything starts. But it starts by you putting yourself out there and being consistent enough with it that you start to build momentum. And if you believe strong enough in your message and you are authentic and genuine as you can be, people will gravitate towards that, because we all want to get to a place where we can be that way, right? Where we can be comfortable in our own skin, where we can feel safe with who we are and free to express who we are. So whatever you do, just do it and keep doing it. Even if you only have a few viewers, you just keep doing it. Thank you to the 3 people that are viewing me right now. You guys are amazing. But what's kind of fun is you post these later on, you go back and watch, and over the matter of a few days, you get up to hundreds of views potentially with some of these things. So the impact always isn't immediate, and I think that's important to keep in mind in anything that you do that you want to do to impact others. But now back to the questions. Questions I was asked tonight. And I would tell you to continue to submit those at any point in time. I'm going to try to put a modality together where you can submit those questions anonymously, because I think we're all a little scared to share hey, we all I have a problem, or I have something I need help with, because we don't want to be seen as being less than, or maybe judged, or all the things that go along with that. So I'm putting together, there's an option my girlfriend was just telling me about tonight, where you can put something together that will allow people to ask questions anonymously. And I think that's important. I think that helps. But just know that anything that you ask me will stay confidential, and there's no judgment here. We are all going through this together. And chances are, if there's a question that you're struggling with, or a topic that you'd like help with, well, not chances are, it's guaranteed there are hundreds and thousands, maybe millions of us out there that are asking the same questions and needing help with the same topic. So push yourself, right? Never be afraid to ask for help, or to ask a question if there's something on your mind. You can send me those anytime, just directly in my messenger. You can post them whenever. I'm going to try to do better at putting a notice out that I'll be going live and collecting questions maybe during the week before, just so I can have more to share. So yeah, just keep those questions and topics coming, and I'll keep doing my best to help and to answer and support. And also, as we go through this, if there's anything that you feel that you can contribute, right, to the topic or to the question, we got comments here, and as far as I know, they are open for people to respond to. At least that's my hope. So it says all viewers can participate in chat, so you're welcome to throw some thoughts, comments, advice in there. I don't have all the answers. I'll be the first to admit that. And but I do have some, and I know that you watching and listening have more. So feel free to participate in that way and share with us your experiences and your thoughts and your knowledge, because we'd all be better off for it. So here's the two questions. Listen to these and see if they resonate with you at all, especially if you've ever been in a relationship, right, which is all of us, or have kids for that matter. Okay, here they are. The question was posed: how can I help a spouse who is making wild decisions only because they think that they know best? Isn't that a great question? How many of us have been there before? How can I help a spouse who is making wild decisions only because they think they know best? And then the follow-up question is this: after making a decision, after making that decision, how can I help them understand that it was not the best decision, right? So there's kind of two parts to that. One, how do you help a spouse not make those decisions? And then two, how do you help a spouse recognize when they do make those decisions that they weren't the right decisions? That's the question of questions there, right? I think if we can answer that question, there would be a lot less divorces in the world, because speaks to the basic premise of what's so hard about relationships is you have two people trying to come together as one. And all you have to do is watch molecular science to see that sometimes things are more permeable than others, but there's always resistance when you try to bring two molecules together into one. I know you felt it when you've been in a relationship, when you entered into marriage. I will never forget the very beginning of my marriage, walking in, I think one night, and there was a couple times this happened. One, it was either, hey, I was ready to go play Xbox because that's what I'd done with all my friends, just all the time while I was in college. Or two, I grab a basketball and go play basketball with my friends. I'll never forget walking in to do one of those two things, probably on different occasions, and being like, yeah, I'm just going to play some Xbox. Telling my wife, I'm going to play some Xbox. I'm going to, go play basketball with the boys. And the response I got was, no, you're not. And I was like, oh, I'm not? Yeah, no, you're not. Okay, what am I doing? You're coming with me to Hobby Lobby or to Michael's, or you're going to go shopping with me to Ross, or to TJ Maxx. We need new pillows for the couch. I'm like, wait, what? What am I doing? No, I was going to play Xbox or basketball. Oh no, you're going shopping with me. And watching these two kind of worlds collide, that's the challenge, right? And that they collide in so many different ways. And one of the ways that these worlds collide between spouses is when one is making choices and decisions that the other one doesn't agree with. And that can be a very challenging place to be, right? And so how do you deal with that? And if you look closely, you can see that this can also apply to just about any relationship, right? I mean, what about kids, right? I could ask the same thing, like, how do I help my kid see that the decisions that they're making are wrong, right? How do I keep them from making those decisions? How do I help them see after they've made the decision that it wasn't the right decision? It really speaks to the heart of more than just spouses. It's really any relationships with any people that you care about. So how do we do that, right? How do you do that? I think there's a couple principles, and what I like to do is share concepts and principles, sometimes some scientific data and just metaphors and things like that, and then you can take those and apply them to your situations, right? To figure out, because every situation is a little bit different, but principles are often universal that you can use in just about every situation. Well, so how do you do that? Well, let me first of all begin by telling you how not to do that. Because it's in our human nature, right, that we want to. I think first of all we need to understand that perception is reality, and just because you see things this way doesn't mean that they will. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try to get them to see your way, it just doesn't work. And so that's where the conflict really comes in. You see things as this way and these decisions as being wrong, and they don't. And no matter what you say or how you try to convince them, that doesn't change their perception. And so what do you do when that happens? That's where it gets hard. Well, number one, I think it's important to just not judge, right? Because we don't know all the things that have gone in to create the perception for that person, in this case, our spouse. We don't know the reason that they see things that way. And maybe instead of rushing to judgment, let's try to find out a little bit more, right? Instead of trying to fix the problem, let's look at the cause of the problem. If that's the way you see it, right? What is it that is causing them to see the world in the way that they see it, right? That is then leading them to make those choices. Chances are there've been several experiences, many probably in their past, that have led them to do that, right? Or to make those kinds of choices and decisions. So let's try to understand before we rush to judgment. Maybe you will find in that process that our perception needs to change a little bit, right? Maybe we'll learn some things from our spouse because we have open dialogue about it. We're trying to understand each other, and we can come together a little bit better than fighting it, with each other. Keep in mind the first act of war is always defense. And boy, have I experienced that throughout my life, right? You have one person that goes on the offensive, you go on defense, and then before you know it, you're in conflict, you're in war. So before you raise up those defenses, try to understand, right? First, let's try to work through it in more of a loving, non-judgmental way. A lot of times we nag, right? We just continually bombard with you should do this, you should do that. We worry. We sometimes overcompensate, right? If decisions are making poorly by someone that we love, well, we try to overcompensate for what we perceive as their mistakes or their poor choices to kind of counteract the difference or the balance. Boy, that can get exhausting too. And then worst of all, sometimes we manipulate, right? And I'll raise my hand. I did this often in my marriage without even realizing it. I had my perception of the way I thought things should go, and when they didn't, and when I couldn't get her to move in that direction, there were subtle things I would do to manipulate. And I think I kind of knew it at the time. I certainly didn't as much as I do now. But manipulation is never the right way to handle things, right? Because you cause somebody to make decisions based in other reasons than they want to. And there's pressure, and there's fear, and there's shame, and there's guilt, and all those things. That's not going to bring you closer together at all. In fact, eventually it builds resentment and can break down the relationship, even if you get the outcome that you want. So cross those things off the board, right? One of the things you'll always get from me is bringing God into the equation, because I taught religion for 10 years. And if you look at how God handles, and isn't this a great question for him, right? Imagine asking him this question, but as it related to all of us. How do you help a child, right, your children on earth, who make poor choices, wild choices, only because they think they know what's best? Isn't that all of us? Can't you see God just laughing and smiling? Yeah, that's a great question. I've been doing that, working on that for an eternity, and still trying to figure that one out. So I like to look for him for examples. Like, what does he do? And how does he do it with us? And if we can follow those examples and put it into our relationships, I think that's always going to be the best way. And in a couple basic principles is that he doesn't force, right? He just doesn't. One of the things that he protects most of all is the ability to choose. And so sometimes I have to remind myself that, like, we all have the ability to choose, and I should protect that, right? Not try to take it away. Even if I'm certain that somebody is making a decision that is poor, right? Now, I know you got to protect kids. That's kind of a different ball game, right? We have an obligation to really keep them safe, even from themselves if they're making some very poor choices, right? We may need to lock things down a little bit. But when you're dealing with adults, that's a little harder to do. And so if I'm following God's example, he allows for choice, even when they are wrong, right? And that's got to be hard for him, especially when he has the power not to allow that choice, right? Flip of his, a snap of his finger, and the choice gets stopped or corrected, or our behavior gets changed, right? He could do that if he wants to. but he recognizes that growth doesn't come from force, control, or manipulation, but from a place of love, of understanding, of I was going to say coercion, but that's not the right word, but persuasion, right? Of persuasion, by patience, right? That's how he works with us. And so that's the best advice I can give, I think, in this context, is to try to practice those things in that situation, right? If you know somebody's, making some crazy decisions that because they think they know what's best, sometimes the best thing is to let them make those decisions, right? Instead of trying to solve it, trying to fix it, trying to stop it. If they just can't see it, then you might just need to allow the choice to be made. Allow them their agency, right, to use it, and trust the process, because life is really designed to teach us what the best way and the right choices are. Sometimes those lessons come through painful consequences, right, and failures and disappointments. And if you're certain that those decisions are going to lead to that, maybe the best way to get that perception to change is for them to experience that, and to allow that to happen, and to trust that that's okay if it does, and that things will be okay if it does. I know it's easier said than done, because there's a part of us that always wants to rush in to solve and to fix and to protect, right? But sometimes we can cause a lot more damage to a person and kind of hold back their growth and potential when we do that, as opposed to allowing the experience of choice and consequence to run its course. And I think that's just a valuable lesson for us to remind ourselves of. I know that was very hard for me, but the beauty in doing that is it kind of sets you free as well, right? If there are going to be consequences to that, they are the consequences of the person making the choice. They're not necessarily yours. You don't have to own them. You don't have to rush in and try to fix them or save the person from those consequences. You can learn to detach and to allow them to happen, right? Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind of that, right? And one, that's how God works. Satan kind of works the opposite. He tries to force. He tries to control. He tries to manipulate. That's what he does. And so whenever we begin to cross those lines, no matter how good our intention is, sometimes we find ourselves moving into ground that we really don't want to be on, because that's how he operates, not God. We want to follow him and his example. And if you watch Christ all throughout his life, he really never tried to force people to change. He helped them to change out of a desire to change, out of love, out of setting a good example, for them, and trusting that they would see the difference between poor choices and good choices, right? Between his love and the love of the world, and that they would gravitate towards him. Sometimes the best thing you can do to help a spouse that is making poor choices is to make better choices, right, for yourself, and allow that contrast to become a little bit stronger so that they can see, yeah, this way isn't working. I need to go this way. That doesn't always work, right? It doesn't always happen, but that's sometimes the best that you can do. As far as like basic things, it's always important to share how you feel, right? If you don't, and those choices are being made, you're going to feel resentment, sometimes not for the person making the choices, but because you didn't say anything, and you held it in, you kept it in, you were afraid, right? And so always speak up the way, with the way that you feel, what you think is best, but then hold your peace, right? You did your part. You can't force that choice to be made, nor should you. And at this point, it's up to them to make it, in which case you allow the consequences to happen, right? And you don't rush in to save them from them. You trust the process. Remember that pain and failure is really one of life's greatest teacher. One of my favorite quotes is from Kung Fu Panda 3, I think it was, where Master Shifu says, if you only do the things that you can do, you'll never be anything more than you are right now. It's okay to fail, and it's okay to watch a spouse make a mistake or fall or experience some consequences for poor choices, as hard as that is, because it's going to give them an opportunity to grow and to improve. And keep in mind, we shouldn't force, right? As hard as that is, we want to change. We can see things clearly. Maybe they can't. We know what will work. They don't. Maybe this is their opportunity to learn, right? So you try to, you step back and allow that learning to take place. The more you try to force and control, the more you will push people away. Just look at what's happening in Ukraine, right? We have a dictator that is trying to force an outcome, and people don't want it. We want freedom. We want to protect the ability to choose, even if those choices are wrong, right? The most important thing is the ability for choice, and so we need to defend that, right? Defend that freedom to choose, even if it's not what we think is the best choice, which can be incredibly hard. Where this really gets difficult is when these choices made by another spouse or a child for that matter affects more than just them. That's where it gets tough, right? And that's where the work of boundaries becomes essential to being able to navigate that situation. There has to be clear boundaries, and you have every right to protect yourself from the fallout from another person's poor choices. Whatever that looks like, right? If you need to create physical distance, if you need to create mental distance, if you need to create emotional distance even, like you have the right and the responsibility to protect yourself. And if somebody else's poor choices are impacting not just them, but you and others, then you have the right and responsibility to distance, right? To separate, to disconnect, if necessary, to do that. Again, that can be very hard, but the art of detaching is essential sometimes when it comes to allowing choice and consequence to run its course and not having it impact us as much as it could. In addition, we can involve others that are affected by that, right? Sometimes getting a group together and expressing those thoughts and feelings can help change a person's perception. When they see it's more than just one person that they're up against, like there's a group, they're like, yeah, these choices you're making are not the best, and it's affecting everybody. Sometimes that takes a little organization and and just courage, really, I think, to be able to confront that person in that way. So that's necessary. Other than that, there's help, there's counseling, there's coaching, right? That's available. Sometimes it helps to talk to somebody and to kind of get these things figured out and worked out with another person instead of just going at it on your own. And then, most importantly, when those choices are made and you see that they're affecting people in a negative way, including yourself, it gives you an opportunity, I guess, to practice patience, to practice healing, to practice forgiveness, right? And to just learn to trust the process a little bit more and trust that they're going to figure it out. They just may not be in the same place as you, but maybe with some trial and error, some failure, some pain, right, some consequence to those choices, they'll figure it out. And when you've at least done everything that you could, you've shared your thoughts, you shared your feelings, that's the best you can do, right? And you can sleep at night knowing that you did what you could. But they still have the right to choose, and I think that's important to remember. And always, always, always practice forgiveness. I can't say that one enough. Forgiveness is not for the person that's making the poor choices. It's really for you, right? To let go of that hurt and that pain and that frustration that you experience from that. So just some thoughts. Those are just some thoughts on how to deal with spouses that are making the wrong choices. I've always tried to lead from a place of love. I think when a person feels loved, regardless of what choices they're making, they know that you become a safe place for them for when they get to a place, hopefully, where they recognize that they need help and that the choices that they're making are not working. And because they haven't felt attacked or judged or condemned, they know they can go to you, because it takes a lot, right, to admit that we've made mistakes, and it takes a great deal of vulnerability. And so you need to be that safe place for them, for when that time comes, they see that their choices are not working, they can come to you, and you can be that safe place where they can then talk through their poor choices, learn from them, grow from them, and hopefully change for the better. So anyway, I hope that helps, my friend that asked that question. If you have follow-up questions on that, or any of you do, please send them to me. I would love to spend some more time on that, or any feedback that you guys have. I think those questions are phenomenal and really speak to the heart of a lot of relationship issues that we have in the world today. So